Oh man.
Good John over there.
I'm really excited. I'm more excited right now than I thought I was gonna be.
There you go.
Hey guys,
Hey, David,
How are
how are
you?
you doing?
Hello.
I'm good. How are you?
We're great. It's thanks for coming on.
Oh, happy to be here.
So one of the things that has surprised me about going to cons, we were going to cons prior to the whole COVID thing, doing panels and stuff, is how popular Power Rangers is. Because if you look at shows like Lois and Clark or Buffy, you don't get the same kind of lines for those shows as you do for the Power Rangers. It doesn't matter who the actor is playing that Power Ranger, their line is always packed. So what do you think it's been that's, made the show so popular even now?
Oh, wow.
In the 90s.
Wait a minute, where am I? There I am. Okay. Well, I think there's a lot of factors that go into the popularity of the show. I mean, they really captured lightning in a bottle that first year that it came out, as far as what the appeal was. I mean, Saban really capitalized on the toy line, and I think that's what really drove everybody's excitement about it, was that not only do you get to see these characters on television, as soon as the episode was over, you could run to the store and there would be a Jason figure or a Trini figure, or you could pick up one of the Zords or whatever, and then you could go home and recreate whatever you saw on the screen right away. So for the kids that were watching the show at the time, I mean, it was instant gratification. And because the way the characters were presented on the screen, as far as like being in the spandex and with the helmet, it was very easy for anybody watching the show to sort of put themselves in those shoes. They could imagine themselves being a Power Ranger. And so I think that was part of the appeal too. So, and then you fast forward 20 years, when those people have grown up and have spent time with the show, and then they finally get to meet the person that was actually in the suit or saying the lines on the show. It just brings all of that. I'm 7 years old right back again, and so it's really fun to be able to meet people that grew up with you and sort of admired the things that you did. And I think that's one of the reasons why, because when talking with using your example of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which was an amazing show. I love that show. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of that audience was young adults, older teenagers, who are much more world-wise. They understand, how things work and can separate actor from role and so forth while they're watching it. It's not that immediate sort of, oh, Jason is Jason, that sort of thing. So maybe that's one of the reasons why you may see longer lines for Power Rangers, because people really, really identify the actor with the role and so forth and so on. But I don't know. That's just a guess on my part.
And they've just carried it on. Like you can find a Power Rangers right now that's on TV. So it's like Buffy doesn't have the longevity that Power Rangers has.
It's like a virus. It keeps mutating every year, and it comes back. So, yeah.
Yep. Just get your Power Rangers vaccine. Yada yada. You might not catch Power Rangers on TV.
Exactly.
I was part of that first generation watching Power Rangers, and my grandfather had to get a second job to support my toy habit.
Saban was very insidious as far as their business model, as far as like making sure that those toys got pushed. Man, they got pushed so hard. I was a young adult in the '80s, and so I remember the Cabbage Patch doll fever and people punching each other in the face and KB Toys trying to get a Cabbage Patch doll. So I can imagine people were just tearing up toy stores trying to find these things. So
Toys R Us, we got there at 8 a.m. They didn't open till 9, and there was always a line waiting to get in to get whatever Power Rangers they were restocking.
Yeah, I never got any actual Power Rangers toys. I always got like the knockoff Power Rangers toys because there were never any back when I went. But I did get a hold of some of the Action Sound Power Rangers gloves,
nice.
and I wore the batteries out of that thing in like an hour.
Nice.
But David, again, thank you so much for coming on. I feel like recent times have shed a light on Zordon as like his life, because he had to telecommunicate. I'm guessing he was working from home. Could you speak to that for yourself or the character? Do you feel like Zordon was in sweatpants when he was talking to the Rangers, or were you in sweatpants when you were talking? Because I mean, it's just your head, like it's just hyper close to your head. So how, like, were you rocking the fuzzy slippers, or did you, were you a little more professional than that?
Well, the bittersweet thing is they only filmed the character one time, and so they recycled the footage over and over. And,
oh no, you got me.
So I was never really on set with any of the other Rangers. Whenever they were in the command center, that was in some other studio, and I was busy working my 2 day jobs or whatever, and I would only go into the offices to do voices for the show like every 5 or 6 weeks, to voice how many of her episodes they had got in the can at that point. So I felt very much like Zordon. I was very disconnected from everything. I was not I didn't really feel like I was a part of the show, except for the half an hour or 40 minutes that I would go into the recording booth to do these very simple and expository lines that Zordon would say during the show about, this is the monster, this is what you need to do, I believe in you, you can do all this kind of thing. The character, I always tell people at conventions or in situations like this that, it was very Spa-like in the tube. Zordon he wasn't in any great sort of discomfort. He was just sort of, chilling in the tube and getting his pedicure or whatever going on. But yeah, I mean, whenever I would go in and do voices and stuff, I was just in regular street clothes. I was very comfortable. It was always cool and dark in there, and you're always in an enclosed booth with headphones on, just watching the screen and waiting for your cue to count down so you could say the lines and stuff. But it is very similar to the situation that we're dealing with now, where because of social distancing and teleconferencing like this, I talk to a lot of people the way Zordon used to talk to the Rangers. It's from a distance and through a screen, so it's very interesting, very, very odd parallel. So yeah.
We've definitely had our fair share of that. Whenever we do panels at conventions, they'll bring 1 or 2 of us on via video, and we gotta play the Zordon in a panel. Absolutely. And this kind of disconnected voice from everything else, but we gotta respond as if we're there. And yeah, I was really curious because I love the work of like voice acting and so forth, and whether it's for cartoons or it's for, say, dubbing or any other kind of degree of voice acting. And you mentioned a little bit about the process there of what it's like to, go into work essentially and deliver the lines, especially with a show like Power Rangers, where they were not just creating like sort of stories whole cloth, but also they were using a lot of the Japanese footage that was transferred over and using whatever monsters were kind of used over there first and foremost. Was there ever a point where you kind of had to take a pause and be like, how do I invest in the reality of this? There's like a pumpkin monster that raps or something like that. And it's like, how do I find the truth in this particular scene? What do you do for yourself in those moments?
There is a lot of odd cutaways or alternative takes that were left on the cutting room floor because the ridiculousness of some of the situations that we would see written into the episodes. You know, there were quite a number of times when I would look at the engineer in the booth and go, "You've got to be kidding me, right? This is what's going on." They turned a purse into a monster. Okay. So I mean, because I had a lot of training as an actor, I had 2 college degrees. So it was really easy to create in my head circumstances that would allow me to just take the weirdness and oddness of the situation and just make it the reality of whatever I was doing. So Karen Ashley always says that the show is rated G with extra cheese, and it really is. And so it was also really kind of fun to be able to play around with the dialogue and stuff. And so we did alternate takes of lines. And I just remember one time being in the booth and Alpha was doing something weird and was flailing around and sparks were flying up all through the command center. And I just remember just ad-libbing, "Idiots, I'm surrounded by idiots." And so that's on the cutting room floor somewhere. Nobody will ever be able to find it, but I mean, it was part of the recording session that day. And you know, we had fun. There were a number of times when either Richard Horvitz, who was Alpha 5, or Barbara Goodson, who played Rita, we were there. We had sessions booked either back to back or at the same time. And it was fun to be able to watch them work and see how they dealt with the same situations. And but yeah, you really sort of had to sort of forget that it was very simple dialogue and just sort of try to play the truth of it and make it believable, because kids who are 5, 6, 7, they pick up on really quick how, if you're faking it or if you're not saying things right. They get that right away. So we had to try to maintain a consistency throughout the recording session. So hopefully we did that.
I love.
I just hope there's at one point a time when we can have that version of the episode where you do just say, "Idiots, I'm surrounded by," like, that'll be a great uncut Power Rangers episode.
To step away from Power Rangers a little bit, you've been working on a movie called The Order with a lot of the old Rangers cast. Can you tell me about that?
That project was the brainchild of Karen Ashley. She, because she had been doing conventions for a while before I came along, I really started doing conventions in 2014. That's when I attended my first Power Morphicon and got to know a lot of my additional castmates, because there's so many Rangers and so many other voice actors that have been a part of the show, and I get to meet them and hang out with them. And for a long time, Karen and a number of the other Rangers kept getting asked, you know, when are they gonna bring you back? When are we gonna see all of you on screen together again? And so Karen had the idea that, you know, instead of waiting for Saban or whoever owned the rights to the show would put something together, why not do something ourselves? And she had talked to Austin St. John about that, and Austin said, "Well, you should talk to Dave. Dave's a writer." So she emailed me, and we started conversing back and forth. And she told me what she wanted to do and the ideas and stuff that we had. So we started bouncing things back and forth between ourselves. And the first initial iteration of the project, I think we called it the OGs. And it was really going to be sort of this Ocean's 11 type project where these actors from the show would form this elite con team where they would go in and they would take down a really wealthy, arrogant jerk and, you know, either steal something from him or deplete his bank account or whatever. It was sort of like this heist type movie the idea that we had. And then that morphed into a much more darker Expendables type type project where we thought, oh, okay, it would be really interesting if we had these actors who were all very used to doing these action-oriented scenes, and so we wanted to do something that played to that strength of the actors being very active. And so we came up with the idea that there would be this elite team of individuals who were highly skilled and highly motivated, but were not attached to any sort of government or country. They just globe hopped and hit these hot spots and took care of a situation just so they could maintain the balance between chaos and order. And that was the original idea for that. And we took about 3 months to write the first draft of the script. Then we polished it, and Karen had put together a meeting over at Nakia Burris's house, and she had invited a bunch of former Rangers, people that we had talked about our fantasy casting of the movie, and she had brought them all together. And of course, they didn't know anything about it, and they didn't know that anybody else was going to be there. And they kept showing up and going, like, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" So it was a very interesting thing. And then Karen pitched them the idea. Because these guys had been approached before. They'd been given scripts before from other projects before, and for whatever reason, those things didn't quite work out. Either the money wasn't there, or the script wasn't right, or didn't match with their expectations, or whatever. So we were both very nervous of showing the script to these guys because we didn't know what their reaction was going to be. And Karen pitched them the idea and gave them copies of the script and said, go home, sit with it, take a few days to read it, and then get back to us to see if this is something you're interested in doing. And it wasn't even 12 hours later that people kept calling her and saying, I'm in, I love it. So we got a bunch of people who are very interested right away. And then Karen pulled some other resources together, and a few months later we were in Los Angeles, and that's when we filmed the proof of concept trailer that we put up on the Indiegogo page and got everybody really excited about it, and met all our goals, and had everything in place. And then the following January we were back out in Los Angeles, and we're 4 days in front of shooting it in front of the cameras. We had our director, we had all of our equipment, we had everything set up, we had all of our days planned out, and then the union, SAG, stepped in and said, you have to shut everything down. And there were a lot of things going on behind the scenes that really brought everything to a standstill. Everything just stopped. And we were all very disappointed, and all of us had to go back home and do these things. And Karen was devastated because of SAG rules, because of union rules, she had to give all of the money that we had raised back. And so we really went all the way back to square one. And it's still ongoing. It's still something that Karen is working really hard to try to get up on its feet. She's been shopping it around to studios, and we've been pitching it as both a movie and as a series. And she's just working really, really hard to try to get it to happen. It's just that it's been very, for whatever reason, people look at it and go, this looks great, it looks fine. It's just not what we're in the market for right now. And then, of course, with the pandemic, everything has just, gotten to a standstill. So I don't have any new information about the project. I don't have any new insights about it. It's just sort of it's been in a very extended holding pattern for a long time. So that's where we are with it.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun from the trailer.
We had so much fun doing that.
David, if I could ask a quick question, I'd like to go back and get a little bit of background on how you started in your acting career.
Sure.
Like, were you always as a kid, like, putting on little plays and whatnot, and it was kind of just a natural progression, or how was it that you got started in acting?
Did you get drunk with your friend Fred one day, and then the next thing you know, you're in a studio booth like, Rangers?
When I was very little, I was a very outspoken child. I was a huge comic book fan. I would read these comic books, and then I would force my parents to sit on the couch and watch me act out the comic books, and so that's really where the bug came from. But as I got older and as I was going through my middle school and junior high and high school, I got a little bit more timid. I became much more withdrawn as I got older. But in high school, that's where I finally stepped out of my shell and said, I want to try to do this, and started doing plays in high school, and got a scholarship to go to a junior college for about a year and a half. And then from there, I went to Southwest Texas State in San Marcos, Texas, which is now just Texas State, and got my Bachelor of Fine Arts in acting there. And from there, I went through the University of Resident Theater auditions and got into the University of Pittsburgh and did my Master of Fine Arts there. So I worked and developed the craft for quite a number of years before I went out to Hollywood. I went out to Hollywood late. I was 29 when I got there. You know, in hindsight, looking at everything that I did and what I went through, if I had the choice to do it over again, I think I might have gone to Hollywood sooner, because the great thing about the programs that I went through, they're excellent theater programs. They give you all the tools that you need in your toolbox to understand what acting is all about. How to create a role, your motivation, you learn how to dissect a script, and you learn all of the basic tools in those programs, and you get a chance to use them on stage. You get cast in plays. You get to really use what you work with. But what they don't teach you in those programs is how to survive or how to be a working actor. They don't teach you all the details that you really need to have in order to survive out in the real world as a working actor. Like there's no discussion in those there was no discussion in those programs about, oh, this is what you need to do, on how you file your taxes. These are all the breaks you can have to sort of save your money. You can take your acting lessons that you're taking, or all the equipment that you buy. For like voice actors, they have to have a recording, a home recording studio where they have a microphone and all this stuff. That's stuff that you can claim on your taxes and all that kind of stuff. So they didn't teach us any of that stuff. They didn't teach us about these are the best places to live in New York or Los Angeles that have a cheaper rent, so you can survive on more than $5 a day or whatever. So if I'd had things to do over again, I would have gone to Hollywood sooner. Once I had gotten enough confidence under my belt, once I had gotten enough skill, and would have just worked harder at getting work rather than understanding all of the tools as much as I did. But if I'd gone to Hollywood earlier, I probably wouldn't be Zordon. I probably would have been doing something else or not doing anything at all. When I was in Los Angeles, and I was taking classes, improv classes at the LA Connection Improv Theater out there, and talked with so many people that had been in Los Angeles for 20 years and had still never been cast in a film, had only done extra work, or they'd been involved with a number of projects that got to a certain point and then they just died. And so that's the normal reality that a lot of people face is, you go out there, you give it your all, you work day in and day out, week after week, night after night, striving to get that one break, and it just never comes. And there are so many stories out there like that. And I was very, very, very lucky to be in a spot at the right time to get a phone call from a friend that I knew from Southwest Texas State, who was working on the pilot for Power Rangers.
My answer is right.
that you know, called me up and said, "Hey, we're having auditions for this role. I think you'd be great for it. You want to come in and do that?" And I had only been in Los Angeles for 2 months at that time. So to get a phone call like that, because I knew somebody from my past, that's also one of the things that you'll hear over and over. It's not what you know, it's who you know, and it's the networking, and that's how people get jobs and stuff. So it was very fortuitous and synchronicity and all that sort of stuff. And 2 months after landing in Los Angeles, I was a big blue floating head. So there you go.
So what you're saying is, like, there needs to be like a vocational acting school, which is more like a 1 or 2 year program that's like, okay, like these are the X, Y, and Z you need to grind it out, because that's what a lot of it is.
Yeah, the undergraduate and master programs that I went through were fantastic. I highly encourage anyone, you know, who wants to be an actor to pursue that sort of thing, because they do teach you everything that you need to do in order to they teach you all the things you need to do to get the job. So they, you know, they teach you how to audition, they teach you, I don't know, what to prepare, that sort of thing. What they don't teach you, or what I was not taught, I'm sure that there are probably other programs out there, either associated with a university or college or whatever, that do go more into detail about the things you need to take care of in order to survive as a working actor. Because a lot of what I was taught was I could get the role, and I could do the role, and I could perform, and that's all the stuff that I would eat up during my time at university or whatever. But it was all the other little details about what to do after you got the job that I had to figure out on my own. So that was very very eye-opening. So yeah.
Hey, David, I got a question. First off, as we wrap up the interview, I was wondering if you could stick around for a few seconds after we stop recording.
Sure.
If you don't mind. And then secondly is, what was it like? I went back and watched the final episode with Zordon. I had never seen it before because I was a Mighty Morphin guy and a little bit of Turbo. But what was it like filming the final stuff with Zordon, doing the voice work and stuff?
I wasn't there.
I meant the voices.
But I wasn't there. I did they used my face throughout the life of the character. So for like 6 seasons, my face was Zordon. But after the 31st episode of Mighty Morphin, Robert Manahan took over as the voice of Zordon. So a lot of your episodes that you're familiar with may not be my voice. It may be Robert Manahan, who unfortunately passed away in 2011. So those final episodes of In Space, where Zordon tells Andros to shatter the tube so that he can sacrifice himself and the Z-Wave goes out, I found out that in 2012, I think. I had to go back and look up myself what was going on. So unfortunately, that's not me. But I've been able to do the voice again recently because of the Shattered Grid video game and the Shattered Grid live that we did at Power Morphicon, which was fantastic. So yeah.
I was going to ask about that. What was your experience like working on that game, and did you get to reconnect with any of your old castmates? Because I know that game is just kind of like a celebration of Power Rangers. It draws from so many of the TV shows and movies.
Yeah, I mean, it was really great to go back into the booth and to voice the character again and to say the lines that Kyle had written from the Shattered Grid comic book. And when we did the panel at Power Morphicon, that was the first time that Barbara Goodson and I, we got to do Zordon and Rita in real time and got to really act with one another. And the audience reaction to seeing us do that live, and the subtleties that Barbara would bring, because in the TV show, Rita was really sort of very hokey and over the top and loud. But during the live read, when we were doing the lines and stuff that Kyle had written for the Shattered Grid book, Barbara really was able to really get into the nuance and the real evil of Rita, and being able to play off of that and to make it much more, the circumstances were much more dire in the Shattered Grid. So to bring that to life was really a lot of fun. And to say those lines again in the video game. And then I got to do the voice for the blue Xenozoic Ranger, so I actually got to be a Power Ranger in the video game, which was very cool. I got to do my Kias and Haas and all that kind of stuff, and for the attack moves and stuff. So very, very cool. Yeah.
I was gonna ask, like, are you mad that Zordon is never a playable character in the Power Rangers fighting game? Like, I feel like he gets ripped off, you know?
Well, it's you know, when the 2017 movie came out and Bryan Cranston was cast as the role, I was very excited about that because my chances of meeting him jumped up 50%. I was like, oh wow, I get to meet him at a con or something. But I was also very excited the fact that they made him a Red Ranger, that he was one of the, you know, the people on the front lines. So I thought that was a really great twist on it. And because one of the great or interesting things about Zordon as a mentor, as a leader, if you look at any other superhero team, like Captain America or for the Avengers, you look at Professor X for, you know, the X-Men, Superman or Batman for Justice League, whatever, they're on the front lines with their teammates. They're out there helping out, and they can show up at the last minute and save their teammates and stuff like that. Zordon can't. Zordon is trapped in this tube, in this time warp, and so he is very, on one hand, he's very impotent as a character because the only thing he can do is to deliver exposition or to deliver encouragement. But I think, you know, in hindsight, looking back on it, that's a really great message for somebody who's younger, who's watching it, because here's this figure who's all powerful and very dramatic and whatever, but is also unable to really help them, cannot step out in front of the danger and protect them or whatever. But what he does do is tell the Rangers over and over, I believe in you, you can do this. And those are great messages for somebody who's 5 or 6 or 7 at home watching it thinking, oh yeah, I can do this by myself. And so whether or not they intended that, or whether or not that was just something that grew organically, you know, throughout the episodes or whatever, I just find it very fascinating that this character who isn't an action figure, who doesn't have any movable parts, but you know, he delivers some really important messages and stuff to the show. So. Well, yeah, I'm a little bummed that there's no there's no Mortal Kombat version of Zordon, but I'm very pleased with everything else about the characters. So.
I'm going to petition for Zordon as a playable character who uses expositional dialogue to win the day. Like,
well, if they model him after the character that's in the Boom comic books, then more power to him, because that guy he's all in shape and he's got a tight butt and he is ready to go. So yeah.
I will say I did have the playset of the command center that had Zordon. You could they had the little knobs you could turn and make it look like your face was moving. So that's still at my parents' basement somewhere.
Awesome.
Well, David, I want to thank you. They say you should never meet your heroes, and luckily I've been blessed that everybody I've met from the show Power Rangers has been awesome, and you continue that streak. So thank you very, very much. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I'm Jason. It's 3 Geeks Podcast. Have a great day.
Recycle your droids.